Stage, set for tragedy. No blood. See? Just a game. Then it was for real. Or was it? A story was made of it and told by the painter who kept the memory. It was the gloves he wanted, pur and souvenir, with the bloodstains intact, impressed on them. He wanted to keep the gloves. Not the hands, not the woman, or the tears she would weep later on. The tears were his, not an invention, rather a loan that became an acquisition. They came from her eyes, and they were cried for him, for herself, for the state of the world then. He utilised and appropriated them, made her pain his signature, created and recreated in paint. So here I am, or rather, here she is, the weeping woman, as the painter saw me, la femme qui pleure, la dame aux larmes. The weeping woman with dead child, with handkerchief, with hands like scissors, with striped bodice, handkerchief and mantilla, biting handkerchief while wiping tears, with eyes like boats, with cup and saucer eyes, saucers spilling tears, with eyes like fish, with eyes like drains pouring tears, with eyes doubly shrouded, veiled by her handkerchief, with eyes on stalks and looping knotted tears, with tears like swinging pendulums, with handkerchief twisted like a snail, with eyes like beacons, lit up to lead ships to founder on rocky shores on dark nights, crying a river of tears, in purple and green, in orange and red, in black. Picture the weeping woman, the imploring woman who wrings her hands and cries. The painter did, over and over again. Was I ripe for distortion, for fragmenting, for chopping up into little pieces, so easily pulled apart and reconfigured, crying out for it, you might say now? Not then. I was not some somnambulant teenager, a sleepwalker waiting to be animated, not like the one before me, the sleeping woman. I was myself, all of a piece when I met him, and I met him. I set out to meet him. I created a performance of myself that I knew would enthrall him. He could not overlook, not notice, or get around me. I put myself in his path on a collision course. He would have to meet me and take me on. I was there for the taking, yes, but I put myself there. I knew all about him. I had watched him with a photographer. I had watched him present himself to have his photograph made. He focused those dark coal eyes and stared down the photographer, who focused his lens on him. Then I photographed him. I was behind the camera with my eyes trained on him, so that the light kissed him before my lips had. I was an emotion ready to receive the image. He had begged my photograph from the photographer, even gave him a painting in exchange for me. I kept the photographs I took of him, developing them in the dark, in my heart. It's a game of love and death, a game of chance and a game of skill. Don't let the right hand know what the left hand's doing. One hand moves the knife, this hand, the other stays still, does not flinch, awaits the blow that is coming towards it. Do I watch the still hand or focus on the moving hand? Part of me is the target, the rest of me drives the weapon, faster and faster, harder and harder. Was this the meeting? True, the poet introduced us, but not here at this cafe. Around the corner from here at a film screening, a press preview. The painter was a friend of the director. I had taken the photographs on set. The poet was a mutual friend of all of us. His wife was my best friend. The painter extended his hand. "Enchantée, mademoiselle," he said, and lowered those eyes and went to kiss my hand, which I withdrew. I replied, "Me plació, señor. Soy de Argentina." He was taken aback to hear Spanish. "Buenas tardes, maestro." I already knew a lot about him and Spain. I'd grown up in Buenos Aires. I was no ingénue. That was an encounter. The true meeting was when he opened the door to me at his studio. I had found it for him. It used to belong to the actor. I had photographed his company in rehearsals, and so I knew it was vacant. The painter needed a bigger studio. I was at his door wearing a red scarf. He presented himself to me as a Greek god, and I fell for it, Sphinx to his Minotaur. He liked to say he only painted women he had slept with. He made an exception for the patron, but then the patron was an exceptional woman. The sitting woman wanted to recognize her face and wear a mantilla, as if there was a choice. We were all Espanol. The sleeping woman wasn't interested in painting and said they never looked like her anyway. And weeping or not, they didn't look like me. But I didn't care. They were all, always the painters. And for him, the likeness was psychological, not physical, not spiritual. A model sits, stands or lies. Either way holds the pose while the artist cuts, slices, paints, sculpts, depresses the button, releases the trigger. Whatever the means employed, the result is the same. She is the target, caught, held in that moment, immortalized, ensnared in what was seen by the artist, seated in a chair, contained by the arms in a cage. The knife thrower takes aim. If she's lucky, he misses her and takes aim and throws again. She is blindfolded and must not move. She must have such faith, such trust that he will miss her every time. Behind her blindfold are her eyes, always hidden like her fear. What color are my eyes? You never really know the true color of your own eyes. I have, apparently, bright eyes and an attentive gaze, blue-green eyes, pale eyes so fixed it sometimes disquiets, eyes glimmering like jewels. Streaks of blue cross my black eyes, bronze-green eyes, monkey's eyes, and a mouth like a torn flower. For the painter, they were always dark and full of tears. I was always weeping, he said. Women are suffering machines. He was always drawing, doodling, scribbling on tablecloths, menus, newspapers, magazines, drawing faces and burning eyes in them with his cigarette. I took out my knife, cut them out, rolled them up and put them in my bag to keep. I kept everything he touched. Stones and shells he'd found and carved with his knife and given to me as offerings. mementos to shore up my future, keepsakes for safekeeping, all in my hands. Take my hands. Let jealousy dangle its proud claws and absence ready its needles. One day the woman leaves, moves on if she is lucky. The first one, the lazy woman, was not, but being lazy she did not mind. The next one, the dying woman, was even unluckier. She died. And then there was the dancer who sat still, the sitting woman who stopped dancing and refused to leave, but was left nonetheless. Ditto the sleeping woman. She woke up, but could not move. I was lucky regardless. I moved away. I was never his mistress. He was just my master. Without me, he would never have done that big painting. What did he really know about politics? Until he met me, he was not engagé. Now his homeland, his patria, was in flames. The headline said, "Mille bombes incendiaires lancées par les avions de Hitler et de Mussolini réduisant en cendres la ville de Guernica." The stench of burning flesh carried over the mountains. Even here we could smell it. The smoke made his mother's eyes weep like a real Mater Dolorosa. Perfect tears of glass running down her carved cheek. He could hear the women screaming, the children crying as the bombs fell. But what could he do? He was only a painter. He wasn't a soldier. He was never a fighter. A winner, yes, a victor, but not a fighter. All the fights happened elsewhere. Everything just surrendered themselves to him, fell into his hands. He liked to keep watch from a safe distance from behind the lines. Without me, standing there beside him, watching him do it, he would never have had the balls for it. The photographs I took allowed him to see it all in black and white and every shade of grey between, to see the composition on such a scale. He would never repeat that painting. Painting a stage cloth is not the same. You work from the original. That big painting was the original. I took the photographs of the big painting in all its stages, an animation of his method. After that, I stopped taking photographs of myself. I had done it all. Portraits, erotica, fashion, documentary, art photography, surrealist tableau. It was enough. I had seen the best. I had worked with the best. From then on, I only photographed the painter and his work. Nothing else. I started painting again. The roses of her fingertips smell like turpentine, he said, and kissed my hands, my painter's hands. I had my own studio. I had been his wicked photographer. Now I was to be his great painter. I painted still life, the river and him. And I painted myself as he did, as the weeping woman. Femme qui pleure sous une lampe. Femme qui pleure au chapeau rouge. I made one last photo montage, a shrine to the painter's women, myself included. Femmes à la toilette, les femmes assises et les femmes au chapeau. I lined us all up against the wall of his studio, a collection of icons in a chapel consecrated to the painter's women, les demoiselles des artistes. He never leaves them. He simply moves on to the next one, picks them like ripe fruit, firm young flesh for the plucking. squeezes them for the juice and chokes on the pith. Not interested in the pith, just the sweet juice. Chokes on the seeds. He never lets go. They ripen and fall away to dance forever in the back of his head behind those eyes. But he never picked me. I picked him. And when he dropped me, I did not fall. I stopped. And then I lived again. As myself. For myself. As before. Unregarded. Sans regard. Sans regret. There is no such thing as love, he said. Only proofs of love. What constitutes proof? I was sterile, a barren woman, a cause to weep for some women. I could not give him more children. He taunted me with it. A real woman, a true woman, gives birth, splits herself open and bleeds, submits herself to the knife. He already had 2 children, one by the sleeping woman and one by the sitting woman. But he wanted more of everything. The one after me, the laughing woman, also a painter, 20 years younger than me, 40 years younger than him. She gave him 2 more children and kept him for a while, but then he lost interest, even in his children. Finally, there was just the pottery woman who took it all and got fat like a jug of sour milk and called him Monseigneur. It is a miracle, the painter said, that we do not melt in the bathtub like a lump of sugar. Everything is a miracle, I say. I melted. I came apart. I broke down. The mirror shattered. I was in tears all the time, but could not cry. The poet found me and made the painter take me to his doctor, the psychoanalyst. I saw him for 2 years. He put me back together and gave me to God, to whom I gladly went. After Picasso, there is only God. This is what I said when the poet asked me to marry him. His wife, my best friend, was dead. We'd all loved her. She had been my model, the painters and the photographers too. I refused him. I could have been the poet's wife. It would have suited everybody. The painter and his new mistress, the laughing schoolgirl, the grieving poet, and I was alone. But why would I want to marry now? I meant it. There is only God. The true God I devoted my life to. Your gaze never leaves me, and your angel keeps me. The painter said my madness had nothing to do with him. He, who had never loved anyone in his life and who didn't know how to love, he said this. And then he said, it was all the fault of the surrealists. How ridiculous, they were my friends. I had lost the painter to love or jealousy, and my best friend, the poet's wife, to death. The war was over. The occupation ended, the dictator dead, the camps open. Life was normal. This was reality. If only it had been surreal, it might have been bearable. And what did the painter have to say? She was always mad. Just look at the crazy hat she wore. I will always be Dora Dolorosa. Before I was Dora, his Dora. Adored mora mia. Adored, adorable, and adoring. Adore made golden by his cold touch. Then it was the sun himself that warmed me. I am Henriette Theodora Markovitch, Madame Markovitch. I shall hold history to ransom and write my own place in it. I have kept everything, every negative, every proof, every scrap of paper, every stone, every drop of blood. The provenance is unique, and mine until my end. It is all there, waiting. My fate is magnificent, however it seems. I used to say that my fate was very harsh, however it seems. But I know now that my fate is magnificent.